So welcome everyone. We're just delighted at the turnout, and I'm going to be quick about opening and kind of framing this discussion since I'm really excited to hear from our three presenters, and I think our hour will go quickly. So here's where we're headed. I'm going to briefly just orient us by speaking very briefly about benefits of father involvement and orienting us to a definition of father inclusive practice. And then we're going to move into hearing insights from our three presenters who Dave has just introduced to you, and the order is listed right here. I'll synthesize a little bit at the end and present some takeaways for successful father inclusive practice, and then we're moving into questions and discussion. So just briefly as we get going, I want to explain to you all that we know that the definition of fathers can be complex, but for our purposes, we are thinking about engaging every man who plays a fathering role in the life of a child. We're thinking about, regardless of biological relationship, regardless of the marital relationship or not between parents, we want to keep in mind all of the people who are actively involved in nurturing and raising children and the importance of their role in supporting child development. So we'll hold in mind diverse family compositions and recognizing that understandings of the role of a father are diverse, and be thinking broadly as we're talking today about all of the men who play important fathering roles in the lives of children in various contexts. So benefits of father involvement, which hopefully all of us on the call are really pretty aware of, and that's part of what motivates us to think about how we can do more to include fathers in child and family services. Just want to briefly recognize that positive father involvement is associated with a range of developmental benefits for children, and the benefits begin even during pregnancy, extend through childhood into adolescence, even into adulthood, and we see some intergenerational transmission of those benefits. So it's associated with positive social, emotional, and cognitive outcomes for children really across the life course, which is part of why it's really urgent to think about how we can do better, those of us who have service provider roles, how we can do more to engage fathers alongside mothers and other family members in services to benefit children. In the realm of programming for children and families, we know that father involvement is associated with improved child outcomes, and this has been shown in studies in a variety of domains. So within the child welfare context, in school context, in early childhood programs like Head Start. And so father inclusive practice aims to actively encourage father participation and ensure that services are responsive and accessible to fathers as well as mothers and children. So that's distinct from programming that is father specific and really entirely oriented around the specific needs of fathers. Today we're talking about programming that broadly seeks to serve families and what we can do to make sure that fathers alongside other family members are really welcomed and that services are responsive to their needs. So one of the ways we do that is by overcoming a variety of barriers to father engagement. There are beliefs that act as barriers, like the idea that fathers are secondary or kind of add-ons as parents. If we think about services as being primarily about serving mothers and consider fathers as secondary, then it's likely that fathers will pick up on those beliefs and be less likely to engage. So beliefs like that on the part of providers can be a barrier. Practical barriers in terms of when we offer our programming, competing responsibilities, so other demands on fathers' time and tension between parents can all be barriers that get in the way of fathers engaging in services. So we'll be thinking today about strategies for engaging fathers, recognizing that sometimes there are barriers to be overcome. And I want to highlight one resource before I move us over to our presenters. This comes from the Alameda County Father Corps. You will get these slides, as Dave said, they'll be sent out to you. And at the bottom of the slide, it lists the website where you can access this for yourself. But the Father Corps has put together a set of father-friendly principles for agencies and organizations serving families that are really terrific and really useful. So I encourage you to check out this resource and the other resources available through the Father Corps. But we'll be talking today about some of the strategies that come along with principles like this, how we think about including needs of fathers, providing father-friendly services, portraying positive father images, and more. So I want to highlight this as a resource for you to carry forward in your work. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Daryl Davidson of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, who will be our first presenter.
Thank you, Tova. Hello, everyone. I wanted to introduce the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative as a collaborative effort between the City of Milwaukee, Mayor Tom Barrett, Milwaukee Housing Authority, and numerous partner organizations, which include father-serving organizations, as well as organizations that may have a maternal child health focus or may even be in other social service sectors. They are there to assist fathers in helping their children to thrive. So the key here is not only the partnership, but just like the father-friendly principles, we have leadership and support from our leading members of the organization, so our CEOs, the mayor, and other individuals who have buy-in. Next slide, please. Our MFI is a hub for the partnership, and it's designed to facilitate seamless access to so many services. And you can think of this as the hook. So not just referrals, but some of the subject matter experts who are our partners are also referring to us. These could include child support services, offender reentry services, workforce development and employment consultation. There could be temporary and permanent supportive housing, energy assistance, behavioral health services, child development screenings. We also are working with our Healthy Start funded Milwaukee County partnership, which includes breastfeeding friendly organizations, which includes our home visiting services. So many things to take a look at. And some of these are delivered close by or in the same facility so that we can ensure coordination among those agencies who are our partners. Next slide. And what we're looking at as far as developing a supportive network, we want to empower fathers in every aspect of their lives. I ask you to think about what organization you're working with. Are fathers welcome there? So by identifying places where fathers need support, it could be public health, it could be social service, those providers can help you work through a comprehensive network that strengthens fathers in every aspect of their lives. Now, there is going to be a commitment to getting the fathers there. And so you have to have a solid foundation. We have employment and educational opportunities for those father-focused activities, including community events. We have father-friendly workplace policies. We have maternal and child health programs that are funded federally and locally, and they establish connections that lead to building trust over years between the fathers, the organizations, and also the families in general. And they show the fathers that they're valued and needed and respected. Next slide. We emphasize also that the fathers need to be the ones who co-lead these conversations. They best understand what difficulties fathers face when navigating systems and can propose informed solutions. I ask you again, is this an opportunity for fathers? Yes. They could be a part of your advisory team as we have them with our advisory teams in Milwaukee. The fathers are a part of the family and part of the community structure. They're not secondary. They're not add-ons. They're not a replacement of another parent. So we're looking for any type of strategic plan that you can do in advance and make sure to be effective beyond just a marketing strategy that says, we want fathers to be a part of our program. Examples of that could include not just having them on advisory boards, but having specific positions such as father engagement specialist, father involvement specialist, father peer advocate, whatever type of program that you're working with, have a specific design so that fathers can be met where they are. And if we don't find that at your organization, at the very least, find out if there's someone who can speak on behalf of fathers who exists in-house. Next slide. So do you offer that father-friendly environment? Take a look around your offices. Are there positive messages there that reflect and reinforce information about fathers that fathers can take out and say, I'm proud to be a father? Have you assessed the attitude of inclusion of the fathers in your program? So your staff, what do they think about fathers? What's their philosophy? How do they communicate? If they're home visitors, do they walk in the house without talking to the father, or do they talk to the father at the same time when they talk to the mom? Are all staff aware that fathers are valued? This is another opportunity. If you're not clear about that, if you have a father-serving organization, let's talk about what it looks like when fathers are valued in an organization. You have training in place to support and empower father engagements. I like to consider that you also take a look at your curricula. Do you have curricula that says family or father or mother in the materials? And is it something that needs to be modified so that fathers are welcome in that environment? Is your program ready to engage fathers as partners in its work? And do you have focus groups and advisory committees that have fathers invited to participate? Also, do you have policies in place to support father involvement, partnership, and engagement? And if you do not, make that a part of your regular meeting. Put it on your agenda. And please be sure to talk to the leadership in your organization to make sure that maybe this is something that needs to be addressed in your mission statement, or at the very least in your organization objectives. So I want to turn this over to Tova as she introduces our next speaker, but I'll be available for questions right after this.
Thank you so much, Daryl. So we're going to hear from Nucha next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nucha Isarowong. I'm coming to you from Seattle, which sits on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. And this is the land that touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Next slide, please. Before I begin my presentation, I wanted to ask for your participation in an anonymous poll. The results of the anonymous poll I won't be able to share with you today, but I will be able to share with you the results of a poll that was taken previously, because it does take a little bit of time to put it together. So the link will be shared with you in the chat. It should be a clickable link that you can go to and fill out. And we're really asking you for 3 words or short phrases that you think the US society or culture would use to describe fathers, and 3 words or short phrases that you personally would use to describe fathers. Next slide, please. These are just quick illustrations. My presentation will really primarily touch on our efforts to engage in workforce development, meaning to provide training and information to professionals who are working with fathers. And this is just to show you that even given the long history of the Head Start program, strongly encouraging Head Start programs and institutions that run Head Start programs to engage with fathers, we're really still only looking at about 23% of all fathers in those programs being engaged in specific father programs that are activities that are targeted towards fathers directly. Next slide, please. And this graphic really is more of an example that when we think about father involvement or father engagement, I'm sorry, we're really talking about specific populations. And this is from the home visiting national profile. And what we see here is that Black families are overrepresented within the home visiting world who receive services, as well as Hispanic or Latino families. And this could include both white and Black Hispanic families, not just white Hispanic families. Next slide. So as we were approaching the idea of developing a workforce development program, we came up with a few hypotheses about why engagement with fathers have not taken root as well as it should around the country, and particularly in Illinois, where this effort was taking place. We hypothesized that home visitors did not know how to engage with fathers. We hypothesized that home visitors were not aware of the influence of fathering on children's development and from prenatal and beyond. There could potentially be social cultural beliefs about the roles of men and fathers, both from the home visitors' perspective, as well as from fathers and organization and institutions. And lastly, bias at the intersection of fatherhood, race, and class. Next slide, please. So when we approached this, we wanted to ask the home visitors the exact same questions, the professionals the same questions. We started out by asking them, what are the 3 words that you think the US culture and society would use to describe fathers, and what 3 words they personally would use to describe fathers. And the results will be on the next slide. First, we'll show you the cultural piece and take a few seconds here to take in the words. The larger words represent the terminology that was used most often. So provider had the most frequency, along with disciplinarian, strong, absent, breadwinner, deadbeat, irresponsible. So you see quite a few, some traditional, provider is a very traditional understanding of the fathering role, but quite a few negative perspectives, at least in terms of what people believe society and culture would say about fathers. Now let's take a look at the personal piece. You see protect important, loving, playful, really standing out, fun, hardworking, many more positive, as well as traditional roles as well. Protecting is one of those traditional perspectives and roles that folks see of fathers. Why these difference? Well, we were asking folks who self-selected themselves into a training specifically on father engagement. So they definitely were interested in learning how to engage with fathers more or better. And so at a cognitive process, when they answered the question, they came out with what they really personally believe. The culture and society piece, though, really represents the water that we swim in, the air that we breathe. This is the underlying culture that informs our everyday life. So the point here for them was that when we're under stress, when we need to make important decisions based on budget, based on our responsibilities, the time that we have, et cetera, and we need to make them quickly, we usually default back to the cultural understanding and then the cultural values and belief systems that we live in. Next slide, please. This illustration really provides that, and it actually really mirrors the work that's being done around racism and anti-racism. That the longer you swim in a culture, the more invisible it becomes. Next slide. Another area that we engage the providers around are the barriers to father engagement. So we asked them, what obstacles have you experienced or can think of that deters or prevents fathers from engaging in services for and with their children? Next slide. We utilize this definition of gatekeeping, or as a gatekeeper, anyone or anything with the power to deter or prevent fathers from engaging in services for and with their children. Traditionally, and most often in the literature, when we read about gatekeepers, we hear the literature talk about mothers. And so we wanted to try to expand that definition for providers to get an understanding of where they are at in terms of their own understanding of what prevents fathers from engaging in services. So the results of our survey, we found these particular categories as being the shared results of what the providers shared with us. So you see society and culture as a category, professional organization, grandparents, mothers, mother-father relationships, laws and policies, and fathers themselves. So the next slide is going to give you a breakdown of what that looks like. And you can kind of already see it, but go ahead and click again, Tova, and that'll get rid of all the the blocking things. So what you see here is that professionals were really identifying sources of obstacles to father engagement to fathers themselves. Mothers, which has been spoken quite a lot of in the literature, only represented 5% of what professionals believe were sources of obstacles to fathers. This was actually really surprising to us as we did the surveys, and surprising to many other people who do father engagement work, because we didn't suspect that professionals were attributing a lot of the obstacles to the fathers themselves. Fortunately, they were also seeing that 22% of the, around 22% of the obstacles that were identified here were professionals that were sources of their father engagement, father's ability to engage in services with their children or for their children. Next slide. So there are lessons learned here, include that there are complex concerns around parent-home visitor dynamics. So some of the providers had shared, and the providers were generally female, of mixed race, that female home visitors were worried about perceived intimacy, the mother's perceived intimacy between the fathers and the home visitors if the home visitor needed to engage with fathers individually. That female home visitors experience fear and anxiety around engaging men, including their own personal histories, as well as current situations, their own relationships with their fathers, as they shared within the workshops that they were engaging in. And lastly, about male home visitors, which there were very few of, but that when they did exist, the male home visitors had reported that initially the fathers that they were trying to engage with felt that there was a level of intimidation between the male home visitors and themselves. And so that's something to look out for, right? That the initial establishment of relationship could potentially be fraught with intimidation, but that once a relationship is established, the male home visitors really felt like that relationship with the fathers was really strong and impactful. Next slide, please. We also had some institutional level lessons, one of which was that institutions or agencies were adding extra steps that into hiring men into the roles of home visitors. So one of the male home visitors reported from our workshop that the board of directors for the organization that was hiring him had to meet and vote on whether or not they wanted to hire a male home visitor for their program, showing a level of potential fear or anxiety around having a man being a part of the home visiting process. And so what might be some of the assumptions that the institutions and organization might hold around men, and then men in the role of home visitors, as well as in the role of professional engaging with families. Next slide, please. And lastly, not quite lastly, we also learned some lessons from fathers or about fathers, because we didn't actually talk to fathers themselves, but these again were what was reported around obstacles for father engagement. Reported as fathers being the source. That home visitors reported that fathers were self-identifying as lazy, uninterested, and uncaring, and other types of self-deprecating types of descriptions. Fathers' own personal histories with their own fathers, beliefs about their roles, the father's own beliefs about their roles, the beliefs about their services, that a lot of fathers believed that the services were a time for the mothers to engage with the home visitors. Fathers choosing work rather than to attend these visits, fathers being incarcerated and substance using. Both of those were reported in ways that really sounded like fathers were making some choices around those things. And we know that incarceration and substance abuse are really tied in with a lot of systemic types of issues. But the way that they were reported were really attributed to the fathers themselves. And lastly, in the next slide, it's really general lessons that there are deeply rooted stereotypes and biases around fatherhood, and father engagement that exists in and across communities. This was in rural, suburban, and urban communities that we were engaging in these workforce development workshops. Professionals wanted to engage with more fathers, but perceived a lot of barriers. And that one of the things that we asked them about was what it would be different for you if you shifted the way that you view the father engagement from it being an important thing to engage with fathers to it being an essential thing to engage with fathers. Essentially, making fathers essential to their children's development may help us to rethink the way that we're actually structuring our programs to engage with fathers, especially for programs that are looking to include fathers with child and family services. The last slide here is to show you the framing that we utilize, which is around the diversity-informed tenets for work with infants, children, and families. The link to the diversity-informed tenets is there in the bottom, and we can share that in the chat as well. But these tenets, these principles, were the framework that was utilized to help develop the father-friendly principles in Alameda County. And so you can see some of the crossovers in terms of topic matters, subject areas, and areas to potentially engage in. So that is my presentation for now, and I will also be around to answer questions later on, and I'll turn this back to Tova.
Thank you so much, Nucha. So now we're going to hear from Kaleem Caire.
All right, thank you, Tova. My focus today is on engaging fathers in schools. We at One City Schools have a two-generation model where we really believe that so goes the family, goes the child, and we can't separate parents from their children, especially mothers and fathers, even if the mothers and fathers, excuse me, are separated. So what I'm going to do is we can go to the next slide. is I'm going to just give you a little background on one city, talk about the impact of fatherlessness on families in our local community, give you some local context so you can see why we're doing what we're doing. And then I'll take you through a series of pictures and give you some stories about some of our fathers, but how we're engaging them in our schools very successfully. And then some general strategies you'll glean from that as to what we could do to really engage fathers and keep them involved in schools. So if you could go forward. So this is just a little bit about one city. We have a fairly diverse student body. 85% of our students of this year are students of color. We have 167 children between preschool and elementary. Right now, our parents are also very diverse, very engaged in our school. And what's really makes it one city a little unique is the parent engagement level of our families is off the charts. Before COVID hit, we would pack our poor little school to the point where, our first building that we had to move it to a local technical college, Madison College, when it was built, so we could have our quarterly events there. And that last quarterly event before COVID, we had 270 families show up. Our parents show up and family members for, I think it was 65 of our kids were being celebrated. And a lot of fathers were there. So, we take a lot of pride in that. This is Dane County. There are 26,000 African Americans in Dane County as of the 2017 estimated census. Now, we also know that there's about another 8,000 African Americans in this community, or people who are considered multiracial, who check that box, but that have at least an African American parent. And we count them as well because visually to other people, they may be considered African American, even if they don't solely identify that way. You can move forward. This is where the impact of fatherlessness in our community is really impacting us and everywhere else around the country. And when you look at the data, we often talk about poverty rates among African Americans and why there's such a gap. And I've told people it's not just racism, that certainly is a basis for a lot of the challenges we see, but it's the fact that we have a lot of single income generating homes. So on the left here, you see the percentage of Black families that are led by a married couple, and you see the percentage of white families that are led by a married couple. When you look to the right, you see we have a lot of single family homes. They already get paid less. Most of these homes are led by African American women, but they get paid less. And so you look at white families where you generally have two people, incomes again in families, the income rate is just so much different. And a lot of the services and supports and things in our community are geared towards those who have more resources. So those who have less tend to struggle. You can move forward. It also shows up, you see the reading rates of our children. This was 7% of Black children enrolled in Madison Metropolitan School District's schools, and this was 2016-17. It's gone up to about 11% since then, but we're reading at grade level. And these were our middle schoolers. So when you look at that, they go from 7 to 11%. It's a change, but it's not a marked change. We know that has a lot to do with the family stress that families are under and a lot of other, social challenges that families experience that don't make it as easy for them to be as involved in their children's education as we'd like. And then on the right, you see also here that this showed that Black women are making more progress than anyone in terms of their growth and development in education and then also in the economy. But here the percentage of Black men with college degrees was 31%. For white men and women, it's 62%. And for Black women, they had the greatest leap. There was 52%. So you're seeing that in terms of marriageability and whatnot, if people are determining a father's education and then their income earning ability as a reason to couple up with them, there are a lot of reasons why we see the separation rates that we see. You can move forward. And then this is just very quickly shows some of the other dynamics in our community that this was data from about 5 or 6 years old. We're still looking for the new data to come out, but it just shows the percentage of Black ownership in this community is very limited. And so there's not a lot of opportunities for Black children or Black families to see themselves in very positive ways in our community that we like. Now it's changing some, but we still have a lot of work to do. You can move forward. So this gets to our school and how we're generating some of these results. Now, this was results pre-COVID. In the fall of 2019, we looked at the number of our children who were coming into our kindergarten and first grade. We wanted to see how they were doing on these interim assessments. This one's called MAP, Measures of Academic Progress. Our local school district uses it as well, but they don't use it until children are in third grade. So this isn't an apple to apples comparison. However, we wanted to see where our children were at these benchmarks to determine where they might be in terms of readiness by the time they got to third grade. And this shows you that the blue area, these are African-American students, and the blue area shows our students in our kindergarten and first grade. And then you see children who are in the Madison Metropolitan School District, both in third grade is a lighter gray and the darker gray is third through eighth. So what it showed was because so many of our kids started earlier in their education with us at 2 and 3 years old, that drives a lot of the progress that you see here that we're making. But also we know that the 2-generation model and the way we engage our families in schools is having a significant impact on that as well. So let me introduce you to some of our dads. You can move forward. So these are some of our fathers, and we involve our fathers in everything. I had one father tell me, yo man, put me on the list. I was like, what do you mean? He said, I'm not getting any information from the schools. I'm not hearing from you all. Every time I call the school, I got to go through a gauntlet of questions. And this was when we were first getting started and I was feeling bad. I was like, oh my God, this is not why we did this. And so I said, all right, we are going to make sure that dads are on the list. So our director, our now vice president of family and community initiatives, we look at the list of parents and when we don't see fathers' names listed, because mothers are usually doing the enrollment, we call those mothers and hey, we need the fathers on there. And that's improved a lot. It's not 100%, but we found that still we have a lot of mothers who either don't want to or cannot reach the father. You can move forward. And that was Family Picture Day. We also get them involved in a lot of different events. We want to see our dads at all the celebrations and things that we hold. We just don't send a list out or a invitation out and then wait for people to come. We follow up, we make phone calls, we send text messages. We use our network of parents to make sure that they're calling other parents. And when we see them at school, we're like, hey, you're going to be there? So we make sure that they're seen and that they're heard, but that our fathers are there. And not all the fathers that you see in all of these photos, most of them, but not all of them are with the mother. You can move forward. This is another key way that we do it. We celebrate our dads. And, I've told my children this. I said, Father's Day is one of the most under-celebrated days in America. We all laugh about it, but with fathers, it's like we might laugh with you, but we feel some pain from that, where it's like, man, how come I'm doing as much as I can? I'm making sure I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Even if I'm only doing the things that I was taught to do or things that I'm trying to do, I would love to be recognized more. And so at our school, everything that we do, even if it's an event that's not geared towards dads, we make sure that there's something involved in that activity, that event, that fathers would like or be used to or would find fun to participate in. You can move forward. This was at our Father's Day. We have a full-time executive chef and sous chef at our schools. We cook really healthy meals for our kids and families. So these were volunteers that would come in on Father's Day and they would serve our fathers, and the kids would also be a part of serving their fathers, and the dads would show up, and we had great participation. If we could show you that whole room was packed with dads, and you can see the smiles on their faces. You can move forward. There's another father, who you can see the big smile on his face. I don't know who's more handsome, the kid or the dad, but this is just, we have a diverse school, but we found that even white males, they're becoming a missing group that we just don't talk about as much because we assign a lot of the challenges in America to them. And so we still make an effort that regardless of all the issues that are going on in the world, we want to see these fathers too. And so regardless if you're Black, Latino, whatever, we got to see you in our school. You can move forward. And then the other thing that we found that attracts dads to school is when there's other men in the schools that they can connect with. And, we talk about how there's such a shortage of men in education and in teaching. There's only one licensed teacher in this picture, and that is Boyce Hodge, who's got the checkered shirt on right there. The other three are assistant teachers within our school. Well, Sakani, my son, on the right there is an associate teacher. Now he's going to prepare to be a teacher in our school, and the other two may as well. Malcolm on the left has a degree. The son Jabari right there, he works with Boyce in our Scholars Academy. Mostly boys are in that program. We have a couple girls, but we made sure that we're going to have males in our school. Now this school is preschool. Now we have preschool through 2nd grade. So when you look at the men that you see, Sakani is a 4K teacher on the right. He's actually in our preschool. And so our dads, when they come to school, they actually have male figures that they can actually communicate with. You can move forward. And then they have significant roles too. Bryce on the right is our preschool director. And again, there's my son Sakani, who is a preschool teacher, 4K teacher, associate teacher with us. But because again, when they come to school, they're met with individuals that at the very least, they feel like, you understand what I'm going through. I can have a serious conversation with you. If something goes on, I can pull you to the side and I can have a conversation and not be judged. And so it's just been really important that we have males at every level of education. You can move forward. And then, excuse my phone's ringing over here. Thought I took it off the hook. We also have father figures in our school. And, Henry right there is a father. He is a coach also for, I'm sorry, you all. He is also a coach for Chicago Fire MLS, the MLS team academy, but he works with us till noon. And then he travels all the way to Chicago every day from 12:30 on to coach. And he does this because he's so committed to our kids. So what we found was our dads, one of the things they wanted to see was they wanted their sons and daughters to have male role models inside school. And so I was shocked by that because, we think sometimes dads can just be very paternalistic and I'm Papa Bear and I don't really want other men involved. That hasn't been true. You can move forward. Same thing for our girls. We talk a lot about needing father figures in schools for our sons, but our daughters, they miss their dads too when they're not there. And oftentimes they miss them more. And so we make a serious effort to make sure that our daughters and our sons in our school, that they have interactions with their parents, with their fathers, and with father figures inside our building. You can move forward. And then this is the last slide. We also go another distance, you guys. It was one thing that one of the dads asked me one day was, there's all these policies to make things available for parents to, make it easier for them to be involved in their kids' lives when they're working. But he didn't feel that applied to dads because when he tried to ask to take some paternity leave to help with his child who was actually sick, he lost his job. And, he said that the look on their faces was like one of wonderment, like, what? That's not what guys do. And they were like, how are you going to take care of your family, all of this? And he ended up losing his job. Well, this is Daryl Davidson. He is our chief operating officer. And this is his son right here. He's working with him. We're in virtual world right now. And I said, look, moms, dads, if you guys have to bring your kids to school, we just got to COVID test them. We're going to make it possible for you. So we do everything we possibly can to ensure that One City is a place that supports dads in every way you can think of. So that's what I have right there. Tova, thank you. Looking forward to answering questions.
Thank you so much, Kaleem. These are such beautiful photos and the stories that go with them too. So I am going to share kind of a few takeaways to kind of synthesize some of what we've heard from our three presenters, and then we're going to move into questions and discussion. So a few takeaways that really, I think, come through in all of the presentations you've just heard. One is the importance of creating a father-friendly environment, and you've heard so many examples of how to do that. Daryl gave those examples of how you can assess your workplace to figure out where you are and where you might need to go with that. Kaleem illustrated with some of the pictures and stories, some of the ways they make it father-friendly by supporting fathers on staff, by supporting fathers as parents of the children who participate in the school. Nucha also offered a number of examples about barriers that we need to overcome to create father friendliness, thinking about the stereotypes that we might hold or that might be part of the water that we're swimming in. So communicating welcome and respect is another big one. And you've heard again some really great examples of how we do that. Reinforcing fathers' contribution is another strategy that I want to highlight. So making sure that when we talk about fathers, particularly knowing that there are these stereotypes that really underestimate what many fathers are contributing, making sure that as providers, we're thinking about ways of recognizing and appreciating the contribution of fathers. Reducing barriers to participation, you've heard some really terrific examples of, and Nucha's work really highlights that. Another strategy is to recognize the diversity of fathers and get to know the fathers that you serve. So for example, in Daryl's work, and he can talk more about this, serves fathers from throughout the city who have all different family constellations that they're part of, who face all different challenges in various aspects of their lives, and working with quite a few partner organizations, recognizing that one agency may not be able to meet every need for a father, recognizing the importance of partnering to match the needs of fathers with other agencies in the community and getting them connected to resources as a part of the strategy there. Another piece is considering fathers in designing and delivering programming. And so, Kaleem spoke to how one city from the start has been really committed to that 2-generation model, with fathers being a very central part of the parent generation, that we're not, kind of limiting who we're thinking about when we think about parents. And then another piece of this work is staff preparation and training. And certainly, the work that Nucha was doing with home visitors speaks to that. But, keeping in mind that for some people who have been doing this work, the initial training that they received may have really assumed that you'd be working with a mom and a baby as a home visitor, for example, and the need to kind of update that and think about how we do work in a way that's more inclusive of all parents. And Darryl spoke to that, saying, look at the language that you're using. If you have a curriculum, is it talking about, moms? Is it talking about parents? Is it naming fathers as among those parents? And, and one thing to consider is that, sometimes in conversations that I've had with dads, even when you use the word parent, they're not sure that that's meant for them. So you need to be explicit sometimes about, naming fathers, that we serve fathers, and we are keeping in mind fathers as among the family members who we are committed to really engaging in the work that we do. So these are just, a few takeaways to launch us into some discussion. I'm going to lead with one question. I looked through the questions that many of you entered at registration, and so want to start with one of those, and then I will turn it over to Dave to bring in some of the questions that you're seeing in the chat, Dave, and in the Q&A. So one question that was appearing quite a lot among the questions that people asked upon registration was thinking about ways of engaging fathers, during COVID, just recognizing the specific challenges that we face right now to engaging family members. So maybe Darryl, you could start with that, and then some other panelists might have comments as well.
Sure. And with this answer, I'm going to give a shout out to the collaborative body, the CAN group from the Black Child Development Institute in Milwaukee. They're having virtual sessions beginning in April on Tuesday, but this is the type of thing that's been going on during COVID. So the organizations that the Parenting Network, Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, have been working to put Zoom calls together. In some cases, it's father-to-father talks, so that may be the focus. And then in other cases, they've been providing services and directly through Zoom calls so that they can conduct classes. The other activity that's been done when it's finally been performed in person, there's been large facilities, so almost the size of a double-sized meeting room or an auditorium where the classes are still conducted, but there's the social distances that are considered, as well as using the other safe and practical measures of protection.
Thanks. So Kaleem, one city has done some events for family, has figured out some ways that are safe to bring families in and continue including fathers as well as mothers. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. We ask me the question one more time. You said mothers too.
Oh yeah. So I was saying just ways that you found to engage families. So fathers and families, just during COVID, there are so many barriers to bringing anyone in. How are you?
Yeah, we did a few things, you all. We initially, when COVID hit, that was Friday, we were told we were gonna have to shut down that next Wednesday, and then Sunday we were told it was Monday. And so immediately when we found out we were gonna have to shut down, we said, all right, we gotta start a COVID fund for our families. We have to raise money. We're going to put some of our own money into it, and we're going to ask the community to help us match it so that we can help support families that might lose jobs. Because we know our families so well, we could know like this family, who they work for, what type of job they have, that this person's doing landscaping, probably not going to get many landscaping jobs right now. And so we raised about 130,000 in about 3 weeks. And we spent 120,000 of that. And then it sort of tapered off in the fall as people started to return to some measure of work. But we did that. We were providing funding for housing, their mortgages, leases. We were providing it for food. They could get a $150 card for food every week, another $50 for supplies. And it helped stabilize our families a lot. I could tell you a lot of the families we dropped checks off with were teary-eyed, and some of them wouldn't ask for it. They were too prideful, but we take it to them anyway because we knew what their income was from their information they gave us. And so we did that. We also started a visiting program that was online. So we wanted to make sure that we had parents had someone to talk to. And so we connected them up with other parents that they're familiar with. We made sure every home had a device, an iPad device, so that they would have access to technology and could communicate both with us and each other. We told them, hey, use it to connect with your family. If they needed hotspots, we gave them hotspots so they could get online. But we made sure someone was calling them, some of them daily, who were going through it, having some serious challenges. We aligned them with counselors. We did a lot of things like that to keep families engaged. And then the third thing we did was, this is a lot of time where you can have tension in the family households between mothers and fathers. We were sending DoorDash to families to like have a night of meals, watch some movies together. We're going to send you Amazon gift cards to watch a movie together. We would check in with the dads a lot, because a lot of times people don't talk to them. And so both women and men, we had volunteers who were parent home visitors for us. We used our 27 tutors who were volunteering to tutor our kids who are all online, to also reach out to our fathers to talk to them too if we had males who were tutors. So we did a lot to help. And I think I know our parents appreciate it, but we've learned a lot too.
Thank you. Yeah, and maybe I'll just turn to Nucha and ask, Nucha, one question that I am hoping you might speak to a little bit is, how you've used the diversity-informed tenets, or how you think programs could use the tenets to think about recognizing the diversity of fathers, that there's not just, one program that's going to match the need of every father, but thinking about the range of needs that fathers might have and how you try to match, the needs and meet those needs for a range of fathers.
Yeah, so I mean, we believe one of the biggest barriers to father engagement is the beliefs around what fathers do, or what fathers are capable of doing. And so one of the central principle of the diversity-informed tenets is around deepening our own self-awareness. That self-awareness leads to better services for children and families. So our own understanding about what our beliefs are and why those beliefs exist. We know that when it comes to father engagement in different school districts, in particular, that there's a racial divide on which fathers are welcomed into the school, which fathers are not welcomed into the school, which fathers are actually reached out to for the school services. If fathers are interested, they actually have a way of getting into the schools to be able to engage with the education for their children. So we need to be aware that it's not just about the roles of men and fathers in the home, or even if they're non-custodial. It's also the intersection of fatherhood with race, with ethnicity, with immigration status, all of the things that we know exists out there in terms of how people are experiencing their lived experiences differently. Now apply that to fathers and fatherhood. We can't deal with the issues of fatherhood without dealing with those other systems of oppression. So it has to happen concurrently for us to be able to take into consideration the different needs of the fathers that are out there. Those different needs they're just too wide to really be able to capture in even in a one-day seminar, right? That those differences are so different and so wide and varied.
Thank you. Dave, do you want to maybe bring out one of the questions that you're seeing come up in the chat?
I do. Yeah, we first of all, I just want to thank all of you for some really excellent presentations. I'm just really delighted, and we can see in the chat that we're just getting great feedback here. But one of the sort of main themes that I'm seeing in a few questions is just this sort of the challenge of building community support around fatherhood initiatives and fatherhood programs. Kaleem, you've obviously done a lot of work here, but I think there's a lot of work behind some of the success that we're seeing from you now. And Daryl, I know that you've had similar experiences. Kaleem, would you start us out and just kind of talk about maybe how you've built that in your work here?
Yeah, and it helps being a dad too. So people see my children, they see me. I've been doing this work a long time, both here and elsewhere. But not being afraid to ask people to help with these efforts. And when I brought up the need to really engage fathers, I personally didn't experience any pushback from anyone. I did get some starry eyes from people because they would look at like, man, we've tried that, we've done this, we've done that, we've not been successful. Oftentimes, it's not been men reaching out to these men because of the fields that we're in, social worker, et cetera, don't have a lot of males in it, especially in early primary education. And so we knew we had to do what we did. We had to make sure we had men in schools. We had to make sure that we made an intentional effort to reach out to males. We had to make sure that we had staff that were, male and female, that would be welcoming to fathers who would be there, and that would be people who would be great people to talk to, but also in just reaching out to that community support. We told people with our 2-generation model that the family is important, whether they are together or not. And one thing we've been clear about with our parents is that, we do not place a value on you, whether you're together or separate. But for us, the value is, will you be here? Will you come see us? Will you let us know when you need something? Will you let us know what your desires are for your children? And then if we can get you guys to work more together, because there's sometimes a lot of tension. If you can sit down with us or sit down with a therapist or someone like that, we just try to be as patient and as welcoming and as what's the word I'm looking for? Non-threatening, to parents as possible, not judgmental. And so it's been helpful.
I also just want to flag one thing that you mentioned earlier, Kaleem, because I think it's so important. You've created a pipeline too. Like you've got the assistant teachers who you are supporting to become teachers. There were some questions that came in with the registration about like where do we find, how do we build up our male staff? And you spoke to that a bit in terms of not just finding people who are ready for the work, which is also terrific, but that you are being intentional about finding people who are at the start of their careers and supporting them to grow into those roles at the school.
Yeah.
Sorry, and Daryl, sorry. Mm-hmm.
I'll put my email in the chat for people, but yeah, we're working with University of Wisconsin and Madison College right now. We'll probably kick it off in the fall, but it's a 5-year bachelor's degree that our assistant teachers can go through and get, or a certification so we can train our own teachers, but that's the way we're going to field teachers that we need.
Yeah. Daryl, do you want to add some thoughts on this too? Yeah.
I do. So part of the reason why it's important to have a collaborative body and communicate across different sectors is you get an opportunity to provide strategy with each other, find out exactly where everyone was trying to go in the first place, and then get on the same accord. There was a question about how to get more males to go into teaching. That's a part of our strategic plan to get more males to go into primary education. We also have partners who are subject matter experts. So the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, as well as me, I cannot answer every question and be the resource for every subject matter, but we do have, again, Black Child Development Institute. We do have locally Milwaukee, My Father's House. We do have other father servant organizations. We do have the Milwaukee Health Department Empowering Families Program, Parenting Network, the Direct Assistance for Dads Project, which is exclusively for home visiting. So ideally, you would want to be inclusive, but the first thing that I'm going to say is before you think about being inclusive, talk to the subject matter experts, the ones who already paved that road for you. The information is there. And I will lean on them. If anyone emails me, I'll put my email in the chat. I'm going to be leaning on some of those networks and partnerships to answer some of those questions that you give to me. So we're all in this together.
Thank you. As you're saying that, you're reminding me to just put this slide up that everyone can see. So I'll save you too much trouble putting emails in chats, but contact information for everyone. And I also just want to flag one thing, the photo credit at the bottom. Another wonderful thing from the Alameda County Father Corps is that they have a photo bank called the diversityoffatherhood.com. You can go there to access the Fatherhood Photo Bank, where they have just really beautiful pictures of diverse families, fathers and their children, all different ages, and photos that they support people to use to diversify the images of families in their brochures, in their waiting rooms, in the various settings where we display images that are part of making people feel either welcome or less welcome, whether or not they see themselves represented. Dave, maybe we have time for another question?
Yeah, I think we do. And I would just want to ask our presenters, do you have a couple minutes to stay beyond 2 o'clock? If we go to like 2:02, 2:03, everybody's kind of nodding there. We're all okay, then we'll keep going. So, we are seeing a number of questions about sort of like messaging in related to like fatherhood programs and even the forms that we're looking at. Nucha, I'd like to start with you. You've put some thought into this. What sort of messaging helps, and what sort of things are maybe easy to overlook that we can maybe make a difference on here to do better?
I think one of the sources of information that a lot of people are missing right now is in terms of trying to get fathers engaged or involved with their children at the very youngest ages, prenatally and onward, is the developmental science that's already out there about the effectiveness of fathers engaging in the parenting role. And it could range, right, depending on how you see yourself being involved. But that fathers, the line out there right now is to say that fathers' care is just as important as mother's care. It's different than mother's care. So fathers are providing a whole other different set of developmental engagement and interaction with their kids that mothers may not be, and that both of those are essential and valuable to the children's development. And I think that fathers themselves don't actually know that. And so they feel like, oh, when my kids are just born at the perinatal stage, they need to be breastfeeding. It's the mother's time. And I'll just wait until the kids are older, and then I'll play with them and I'll engage with them. Even at that level, you can still be involved with your children at the very youngest, right after birth time, to help develop that bond. So I think if there's going to be a message that's out there that I hope that that folks would get out, is that fathers' engagement during prenatal and right after birth is really, really vital.
Okay. Thanks so much for that. So, I'd like to give everyone a shot at that, but I think just in the interest of time, I want to just get one more question in if I can, before we kind of like give you all an opportunity to do sort of a wrap up thought here. But, I know, Kaleem, you talked about sort of the importance of building friendships and relationships among fathers and just among some of the men that are involved in your program. Can you talk about that? And then Daryl, I want to give you a shot at that one too, okay?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Some of it's happened organically just because they see each other. Like, we don't provide transportation at our schools for our preschool or our public charter school. So they have to come to school. And because the fathers feel good about coming to school, and it's like a gathering place for them, they meet each other. And it's like the more they meet each other, the more they're willing to come and pick up kids because there's somebody there they can catch up with. We've had dads now getting their kids involved with sports activities together, taking them movies together, going fishing. And I'm talking about, these are fathers who aren't all middle income fathers either, but they're making time to connect with each other. And they're reaching out to each other, I could tell you, quite a bit, honestly, when they have needs, especially during COVID, because there would always be like one or two fathers we would hear from. And they were like they were the parrot for other dads who may not want to come forward themselves or may not want to let everyone know what was going on with them. And so that's been really helpful to us.
Daryl, you're on it.
Sure. I was going to say, for us, it should be built into the program. So the expectation at the beginning is that the dads are going to get to know each other. So again, I'll use the example of the Direct Assistance for Dads project. That one has within its funding considerations and requirements that the fathers have meetings once a month with each other. So they are going to have a group interaction where they are mentoring each other. And this could be the fathers who are participating in the program. In that particular program, it's a home visiting program where they can enroll prenatally And they may also be able to meet people who graduated from that program. Another element that we have is introducing the fathers. I saw a question in the Q&A about difficulty of meeting with teen fathers. At our Milwaukee Public School System, there is a teen parent program, and there are 2 representatives. One does have a specialty area with working with fathers, and so we are connected with them. And again, we have the introduction and the marketing that lets them know the fathers are welcome here. The last thing I'll say about this is, you know that the fathers are welcome if you tell the fathers that we will meet you where you are, and we'll also include that as we'll meet you when you work. So it can't be that everyone is on our schedule. In some cases, the classes or the get-togethers may be on a Sunday versus a weekday between 9 to 5. So make sure that the fathers are a priority. And if you are not a father-servant organization and you are trying to bring fathers in and you want to bring moms and dads, one of your first meetings should be the father meeting. So bring them in right at the beginning and let them know this organization appreciates you and wants you here.
So I want to give each of you an opportunity to kind of offer us just a quick parting thought. Nucha, would you start us off?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think that we have made some movement in terms of father engagement, and there's quite a long way to go because of the intersectionality of fatherhood and all of the positionalities that we have in society that we're just starting to kind of learn about in more general ways. And so trying to incorporate that knowledge into the work that we do is going to take time and effort and investment, both in financially and otherwise. So thank you for this time, and I hope that it has been valuable for you all.
Thanks so much. Kaleem, would you go next?
Yeah, sure. That, one is just that we can get fathers involved in education and in schools. We just have to step out of the box and try some of these strategies to make it happen. The other thing is don't underestimate the father's desires to not only be involved in their children's lives, but just the activities that happen around school. And it's everything. It's not just the hard manual labor. They want to come in. They want to read to kids. They want to volunteer and help put the library together. They want to volunteer and put the playgrounds together. There's other things that they want to do to keep them engaged. And then the third thing is that we have to go meet them. We have to go get them too. That's the other thing I should have said, is that we actually go out to get our fathers. And so if they're afraid to come to school, I've done a lot of that. I'll call them up, and if I find out where they work, I just go show up and, hey, man. And once we break the ice, it's a lot easier to get them to come to school. So a lot of times you got to go to them because they're not used to being engaged or accepted in that way. And I do want to give a plug to Families and Schools Together. I should have said that the FAST program has been a critical part of us getting our families involved in education. It's a very research-based program, but we made an effort to make sure that fathers participate, even if the mother and the father aren't together. So a 2-generation strategy is what we should be focused on in schools.
Okay. Daryl, would you go next?
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone. So Tova, Kaleem, Nucha, appreciate working with you today. Thank you to everyone who's been on this meeting, as well as the partner organizations that work with me typically. I do want to emphasize that we should not consider a father's reluctance as the father does not want to be involved. The father may not have come through an environment where they knew what involvement looked like. Mm-hmm. So it's up to us as fathers, what barriers they may have. We overcome those barriers or help those fathers overcome those barriers. One way is to send messages periodically, positive motivational messages, even messages that might even address myths and misconceptions. And always, if you really want that father there, if you're a home visitor, talk to that father when you see them, if they're on the porch, get them inside the house so they can be a part of the conversation, and make sure to remember that the father is important at every stage of the child's life, whether that's prenatally all the way through. So thank you again, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the week.
Okay. And Tova, you started us off. Will you finish us up here?
Thank you. Well, I'll echo Daryl in saying a big thank you to everyone who was involved in presenting today, as well as everyone who joined us today, and to the Prevention Board and IRP, of course. I've just really appreciated all of these examples, and just want to highlight that really it's to everyone's benefit when fathers can be have the opportunity to be involved in positive, caring ways in the lives of their children. So children benefit, fathers benefit. It reduces stress for their co-parents when fathers are able to be more involved. So it's it matters for fathers themselves, and it matters for families that we do what we can to engage fathers in services. And I really value all the strategies that you all have highlighted for us today. So thank you.
Okay. I am so grateful to the four of you for the work you put into this. So Kaleem, Daryl, Nucha, and Tova, thanks for doing this. And Tova, I just want to give you a special sort of shout out. It's probably obvious to everyone that's on this webinar that you've been just a driving force behind this webinar series. And so I just want to thank you for the organizational effort and just the expertise that you've brought to this. So as everyone knows, we are sending out the recording. We'll have that out tomorrow along with the slides. And so you can look for that in your email. But I just want to thank everyone for being here today, and so long for today. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.